Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. We are almost there. This is the countdown. This is our third last event of this virtual summit. And I have some really special people that I'm introducing you to. One who I met because of a horrible tragedy in her life, and she has become a champion for children and champion on mental health and a champion for parents who have had to face similar uh, disasters in their life. And so I want you to meet Carol Todd.
Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Carol.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So Carol is in British Columbia, Canada. That's where she lives. And she is involved in the school systems. Luckily, all the kids are out at school, but apparently the teachers and school administrators are expected to go back after spring break. So we're lucky we got you.
Thanks.
So, um, do you want to tell the story or should I start and you fill it in? Tell me what you'd prefer.
You can start.
Okay. Many years ago, there was a young girl whose name was Amanda Todd, Carol's daughter, and she had had a tough time in life. She had the depression and she was under medication for it. She was on birth control pills. She had problems socializing within schools. She was very attractive. That meant that a lot of the girls didn't like her and a lot of the boys liked her too much. And she had experienced bullying in real life and cyberbullying, even though I don't even think it had a name then. And it was very painful. She tried to deal with it. She uh, engaged in self-harm and went online to YouTube, and she posted a video that became famous around the world where she used flip cards telling her story. And eventually, when things didn't improve and her antidepressants weren't available and her birth control pills had run out and her counselor was unavailable, it was a perfect storm, as Carol has said it, and her daughter took her own life. And for many, many years, wherever I was in the world, I could be in South Africa and I could be in Bangalore, India, and I could be in Paris or Hong Kong or wherever I was in the world, the Yukon, the kids all knew her by name. And when you talked about cyberbullying, they all said, yes, Amanda. But in the end, although it's a perfect storm, and we'll talk about what that means, the thing that really cost Amanda her life was sextortion. And we're starting to see at least a beginning of justice there. I'm going to let Carol fix anything that I screwed up there, and explain, the
Okay.
story. Yeah.
I think we have to go just a little backwards in the timeline a bit. So, Amanda was a very spirited child. Unfortunately, she had ADHD. She had learning disabilities. She struggled with her academics in school. So, when using technology, that was one of her strengths. So, performing arts, visual arts, technology, anything that was hands-on, um, she was able to successfully demonstrate skills, and she came alive when she could do all those kinds of things academically in school, learning her math facts, learning science facts, social history dates. Those she struggled because she had working memory problems. um, I mentioned that, performing art, she loved to sing. And so when you backtrack in the timeline of her story, she would create these videos of herself singing. Now, you have to remember that when Amanda today would be 23 years old, and she started singing and taping herself using when she was 9 years old. And we had no cell phones back then. We had no digital devices that could stream video or anything. So she created these on just normal, ordinary cameras that had video, or a video camera that the one I had, as I recall, was filmed only in black and white, right? And then you had to use multiple plugs to plug it into your TV and or your video recorder, and it was a process back then. When she was 11, she would continue to make singing videos, and she wanted to be famous and found just like Justin Bieber did, and that was around the right time. After posting some singing videos on YouTube, um, and it's the same way that TikTok works now, and Instagram, and people comment and people like and people share, and so she had some individuals who liked what she was doing and her singing and paid her compliments. And I guess back when this all started for Amanda, we as parents and adults were naive to how YouTube and social media worked back then. And we thought that it was a safer environment for kids, and it was something that they could do and watch movies just like we would turn on the TV and watch movies. We didn't understand the commenting and the back and forth communication tools that were available. So this individual would pay her compliments and say that she was pretty and that she was beautiful. She had a wonderful voice, and she'd become famous one day. And would she like to sing for his friends? And Amanda felt that this was okay, it was fine, and she thought it was someone who was her own age, because he told her that he was 15 or 16 years old at the time. Unbeknownst to her, she was being groomed, and that's a whole layer of exploitation of the sextortion that happened. Eventually, Amanda was, invited to into the a room to sing to other people, and then I guess the trust was built up of, I'm from here. Where are you from? What do you do? What do you like? How's your family doing? Oh, that's too bad that so and so, your family's fighting, and I'm always here to listen. Um, and eventually, the trust built up, and this individual asked Amanda to lift up her shirt, show her chest, share images, whatever, and Amanda did. And then the extortion started, where Amanda was threatened that if she didn't share herself, more of herself, this person would send her pictures out to her friends and her schoolmates and her parents, and she would be ruined. And Amanda, being 12, 13, was scared, didn't tell any adults what was going on, and kept it all to herself until eventually, mm, December of 2010, this person did share, posted Amanda's image on a adult pornography page, and then shared the link out through her Facebook, um, which is harder for a social media network to find because it's only a link. Um, the good thing is that someone reported it to the police. The police arrived at our door, and they attempted to sort of look into it, but nothing really came out of that. And you can see Amanda's story if you Google Fifth Estate, the Man in the Shadows stalking Amanda Todd, or the Investigation Discovery Channel Web of Lies. There are episodes with Amanda's story on it. Eventually, with all the blackmail and the image being shared online, Amanda's peers started the bullying, and the cyberbullying went full steam. And Amanda tried to avoid it, get away from it, ignore it, and it didn't work. Her peers, which are not friends, continued to harass her and make fun of her, to the point where Amanda attempted to move to different schools, and that didn't work because the internet is worldwide and global, as we see now. Um, there is no hiding behind, there is no running away and avoiding anything, because it just follows you. Um, but the following is not the fault of the internet. The following, um, is the result of inappropriate and indecent and harassment behavior of others, which is what we are all trying to change, is the behavior of others online and offline. Eventually, it took a toll on Amanda, and she attempted to take her life several times, and unfortunately she succeeded on October the 10th of 2012. And I guess that's one of the reasons why, Perry, you are sitting there advocating and I am sitting here advocating, because we're trying to stop a global problem. In April of 2014, the Dutch police, um, with support from Facebook and the RCMP and global police forces all over, found the man who was sextorting Amanda, and he was at that time a 35-year-old Dutch resident living in Amsterdam, who has since been charged with victimizing 34 other young girls and 5 males, and he is in Dutch jail for got sentenced for 10 years and 8 months, and he will hopefully, well, I don't know now with this virus going on, but he will eventually be extradited to Canada to face the charges put against him for what he did to Amanda.
I've known you almost since it happened, Carol, and I've been working on cyberbullying, these issues, since 1995. But there's something about Amanda's case that touched all of us. Her vulnerability, the tragedy of this, and even in the beginning when we didn't really, many of us didn't realize that it was sextortion that was involved, and thought it was pictures that had just gotten out. Her story meant so much to so many children in particular. And I remember I called you and told you that I was in Bangalore, India, in a school in the ashram, and there were 13-year-olds who knew her name. Um,
Yeah.
and she has saved so many lives because she shared a story that everyone understood and appreciated. All of the young people did. And then when we lost her, the kids felt that loss. They knew her. They had seen the video. They had understood the pain that she was facing, and they felt the loss. And I remember we were sitting somewhere, maybe in Ireland together, and I was very hesitant to use the word, but I said, Amanda's case is a good case to train on because everything went wrong. I said it was like a train wreck, and and you looked at me and you said it wasn't a train wreck; it was a perfect storm, and that has touched me so deeply. Could you explain to people who are watching this what you meant, and how all children, if the right circumstances occur, could be in the eye of that same perfect storm?
The one thing I want to say before I start talking more is that if anyone has experienced any kind of bullying, cyberbullying, sextortion, being harassed online by someone who wants more information, wants intimate images, if you're a young person, go tell an older person, because these are serious things and they often can't be resolved or figured out by same age young people, if you know what I mean, right? These are serious things. And so I wish with all my heart that Amanda had shared all this information sooner, because as adults, we could have supported and helped her a whole lot more than we did because we didn't know. In the perfect storm, let me dig back into my memory.
I remember you talked about the medication. Her counselor was away. Her hormones had to be renewed, and
Well,
her depression medication, she was out of that as well. And she was particularly vulnerable at that time.
I think, once again, it goes beyond that. Amanda was born with ADHD. She had a learning disability. She was diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder. She had a language disability, which I think hindered her, the way she could interact with her peers in common language understanding. Um, she she had a family that her dad and I separated our ways, which is hard for kids, because then you start the going back and forth and living here for a weekend, living there for a weekend, and that takes a toll on kids in general, like regular typical kids. But you add a child that has some anxiety and some distressing factors, it just put some more of a boil on it. And then I can say honestly that her father and I didn't see eye to eye on certain things related to the kids, and that went back and forth, right? Um, Amanda had, yes, she was on birth control, and she was hormonal, and she was on antidepressants, and prior to 5 weeks prior to her death, she was admitted to a adolescent psychiatric hospital where they upped her dosage of antidepressants, but we didn't have a doctor's appointment for a couple months until after she was released, so no one could monitor it. All those things created that perfect storm of what did we miss? What could we have done better? Amanda also had a counseling appointment the afternoon she died, but unfortunately her therapist had some sick kids at home, so had to cancel. I was going to go home early, and then I got a work related phone call, so I stayed at work. Justin Bieber was supposed to be in town October 10th, and Amanda wanted to go so badly, but her social anxiety didn't let her like even go out of the house, so she couldn't. But she was watching how all her friends were planning to go, and it depressed her. She had an ex-boyfriend that she had been dating that was treating her poorly. It just came to a bubble and came to a head. And 5 weeks before Amanda died, she posted her YouTube video and shared her story, and I asked her why she did it. Asked her why she included her name, and she said, well, Mom, I wanted to include my name because I didn't show my face on the video, so that's okay. That's what you always told me not to do, and how can you argue with that? But sharing her story, she's told me that she just wanted to tell her story out there and get all the I'll get all the young people who were harassing her to stop. And I said, so what if they harass you online? And she said, I'll just either delete it, ignore it, or they can suffer their own consequences when other people comment. And that was a pretty mature kind of conversation I had with her at that time. And we didn't know that her story, and Amanda's dream always was to help others, and by sharing her story, she would share what she had gone through from start to finish. And she made the video not ever knowing that she was going to end her life. Her video was just to tell her story. And her dream was to become famous like Justin Bieber. And who would have known that this video to date has over 50 million views? If you look at the sharing and the resharing of the original video. And so I had someone go through and count them all up, and 50 million views. And I posted it on my own channel, and I get comments from people, from kids and adults from all over the world, who share the thought that, and you brought it up, how individuals, humans, I'll call them humans, still talk about Amanda. And it's that empathy which we are all trying to create. And the messages I get include, I wish I'd been there for her, it shouldn't have happened, or I'm a parent, this has made me talk more with my kids, and it just opens up the conversation. And I've been all over the world in the last 7.5 years since her death, talking to law enforcement, and ICE teams and psychologists, psychiatrists, medical practitioners, and they all say the same thing, is that Amanda opened their eyes and created a conversation that was hard to start. And so if Amanda hadn't created that conversation or created that video and posted it online, um, well, first of all, you and I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. And millions of kids and adults around the world um, would not have a starting point.
And it's so interesting. You've now done it again. It's not just the perfect storm; it's a starting point. And I'd been working on cyberbullying for, well, now it's 26 years before it had a name. And so it was many years before Amanda was born. And it gave a starting point. It made it real. It turned it into something that you recognized, a young girl who was in such pain and needed to tell her story and did. And so if you take those 50 million views, Carol, and you
Mhm.
recognize that every person who saw it uh, talked about it, even if they didn't share it, or they might have shared it in a way that you're not going to be able to track, and they might have downloaded or separately videotaped that videotape. My guess is at least 100 million people's lives have been
Sure.
affected. Young people
Yeah.
chose to uh, get help from parents. Young people chose to talk to a friend who needed help and to call the helplines, those that you work with and those that we work with, and found a way. I wonder how many lives she saved and how many
Well, yeah,
lives changed.
we don't count the I just got a email from a teacher in somewhere in the United States who, I don't know what course it is, but it was high school, and she showed, because they can do that in the States, showed Amanda's video and started a conversation about social emotional wellness and empathy, compassion, and behaviors and bullying, online safety, and her students wrote reflections on it that she's going to mail to me, right? Um, but how many of those opportunities has there been worldwide where Amanda's video has been shared within schools and that conversation has started? Um, I'm proud of what she created. I'm I'm still angry, and I'm at her for not being able to share her distress and her social emotional um, not well-being with us at times when she needed it the most. But I think also, for being an advocate of youth mental health, I've it has opened the eyes of the world in um, talking more about all those issues. So Amanda, there's that perfect storm. There was family dysfunction, there was early onset of anxiety, which can be a precursor of later onset of youth mental health, dysfunctional family, learning disabilities, um, that teenage angst, um, and then
Hormones.
yeah, and then the pressure of being a young girl who was biracial and having to deal with that, right? And it was the perfect storm. And sometimes people are put on, as humans. I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. And our destiny, sometimes we're all put on earth for a special reason. And maybe that was Amanda's special reason to be on earth, was to teach us all something. And she certainly continues to do so after 7.5 years. Like, some people I talk to and they say, "How long has Amanda been gone?" And I say 7.5 years. And they say, "It doesn't seem like 7.5 years because her story continues to evolve."
Yeah. And it's relevant. You know what? Well, this is a 3-day summit directed specifically at digital and digitally facilitated sexual exploitation of youth.
Mhm.
And it's the one I've talked to you about that we're going to host in Princeton, and then Corona hit, and so we ended up doing it this way. Um, and I had a number of people. I had an adolescent psychiatrist who was there, and he talked about mental health and he talked about these issues, which you expected him to do. And then I had the head of sex crimes for the internet, the internet crimes against children task force in the New Jersey area, who was part of the New York Times series and everything. And I thought he'd be talking about the new ways that sexting and sextortion and the rest. And he spent almost the entire time talking about dopamine and what the internet does and mental health and wellness. And then this morning, the head of standards for the IEEE, the company that builds standards so Wi-Fi works the same whether it's in my house or a restaurant, they are the ones who built that. And he said, it's a dopamine issue. And all of a sudden, the words that no one talked about and the mental health aspects that no one thought was serious enough to include, it was just, go outside, get some fresh air, you'll feel better. Now we're recognizing that is so impacted by digital technology and impacts digital technology that we have to start from the core, and the core is prefrontal cortexes.
Yes, and you know what? And using technology, and now that we're all in self-isolation, it's even more important to talk about your digital screen time and what defines wellness, right? And unfortunately, wellness says take a break from digital screen time, because I believe in my findings and talking to researchers and PhD doctors, right? Being using screen time, and depending on what you do, it restructures and rewires your brain, especially when our young people, their brains are so malleable until they reach, between 25 and 28. So when they're 13, 14, 15, and they're on social media and they're watching TikTok videos and they're being paid attention to, so many adults in this world say, well, I've talked, or parents, I've talked to my kid, I've told them the dangers, I've told them they shouldn't be doing this, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Your kids aren't listening to you. They've turned us off, right? So we have to find multiple different ways in order to share with our kids what is safe and what is not safe. And not saying that you can't share pictures, but you have to be able to critically understand the kinds of pictures that you can share, and how it will affect, if it's inappropriate, how it could affect your life later on. But we have to give them the real life stories,
Yeah.
so that they believe that these things can happen. So when you show them an animated cartoon, that's what they think it is. It's an animated cartoon that can never happen. When you show them the story of Amanda, or the story of Ratea, or the story of Audrey Potts, things that really happened that are in the headlines of the newspapers, then they sit back and go, wow, that really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you show them that, you know, there's a group of kids in a school that are gathering intimate images and posting them on a shared document to share, and those kids have been charged, that's a real story. That
Yeah.
can really happen. You can end up in jail. You can end up with a criminal record. You can ruin your life. Those are real stories, right? So,
We call that making it real. And it's
mhm.
so important. I had 4 of my teen angels on yesterday, and they're new. They're new in the training. So they were 14 to 16 years old. And we talked about this. And when I first met them, they hadn't heard of Amanda. It was just those few years that they didn't. And then I said, do you remember the girl who was in the video? Oh, yes. So I said to them, what do we do to deal with this? Our kids going to listen to us and we say, don't take off your clothes, don't lift up your shirt, don't do this? And they said, no. I said,
Mhm.
do we talk about the fact that it might be a crime and you might get arrested? They said, well, it's important, but we're not going to change what we're doing if there's a cute boy on the other side or somebody cares for us. They want to do a documentary
Hmm.
because they said we need the real stories They'll write it. We'll get young people to do it. I'm sure they're going to reach out to you and ask you from social isolation, or if they drag you back to school, to share this. And they said the only way that young people will learn is to hear the real stories. Um, and, we talked to Leah yesterday, I think, or Monday,
Mhm.
and these stories are so tragic because the kids that chose suicide for that split second of fear or anxiety or whatever are real kids that could have offered so much to the world. They had this. They had a brightness to them. They had a future. They could affect the world, and um, I find that incredibly sad.
Ritea and Amanda were at the very start of the um, digital screen social media evolvement, let's say. If those girls knew that they weren't alone
Yeah.
in this whole situation, I believe that it would have given them strength to become the advocates that of today, right? Except they felt all alone in their ship. Last April, I was in Detroit, Michigan for the sentencing of Michael Berenson. And he was a online pedophile groomer. And he was at the top of his food chain. He had people under him. And so the people under him, I believe there were 14 or 15 men. Some of them, I guess, ratted him out. So the investigation was able to continue. Michael Berenson was also, he was originally from Seattle. He was 32, I think. He was autistic, high functioning autism. Um, and he was sentenced to 55 years um, in the Department of Justice in Michigan last April. The interesting thing in that story is that there were other victims of this individual, of Michael, that were in the courtroom, and they were young girls and young boys. Um, I call them young because I'm older, but these young people were aged 15 to 25. And I talked to some of the young people who were 23, 24, 25, and they were victimized when they were 14 and 15. Oh, I forgot to mention that I was there because I was subpoenaed by the Department of Justice because Michael Berenson had a file in his computer with Amanda's name on it. And so she was part of the victim number, whatever, right? Um, when I talked to the young girls who were victimized, some of them remember chatting with Amanda online. And so I asked them questions because I never got a chance to talk to my daughter specifically about details. She wasn't ready to share it, and probably, by the I never got to hear her story. But I heard it through these young people about how they were victimized, how they were groomed online, how they felt, the mental health sufferings, the depression, the anxiety, the self harm, the suicide attempts of these young people. And then one of them told me that, and she's 23 now, that she only told her mother 3 years ago. She couldn't, she was just traumatized, embarrassed. And it wasn't until the investigator showed up at the door with questions that she had to tell her mom. Um, and that made me understand what Amanda was going through at the time. Um, and there are so many young people, children out there being victimized um, that we don't know about, but we have to encourage them. We have to give them the tools in the toolkit to know when they're being preyed upon, so that they can go to a trusted adult to get help, ask the questions, even say, this person's asking me these kinds of questions, um, and I'm not feeling comfortable. What should I do? Or what do you think? You know, those are all kinds of things that we need to make sure our children know about and hear about and can do. It's an actionable thing to do, right? And so being in Detroit gave me some closure to my circle. My circle will never be completely closed, but talking to these young people, um, it made me understand what Amanda had been going through. And those young people in their early 20s are still going through different things related to that.
And
So,
I think they always will.
mhm.
There's a young girl I know, and I know her parents. And her parents reached out to me because they learned that their daughter, who was uh, uh, had depression and ADHD and a few other issues, she was seeing a counselor, she was on medication, had met internet sexual predators online, one who was grooming her and offering to pay her for images that he was then marketing and selling to others. And she agreed to take these pictures. The parents discovered it and didn't know what to do. She was bright, she was capable, she had vulnerabilities, but they were good parents who were attentive and just were blown by this. And as soon as they encountered this, they took her phones away and everything else. But before the phone actually left her hand, she reached out and warned the predator
Hmm.
that her parents had found out. And the parents are now trying to recover, and their daughter feels guilt because this isn't somebody who's dragged off a street into a white van. They feel guilt because they engage in this, and she feels fear and sad that she's saddened her parents over this. But she still doesn't understand the risk and the realities here. And I told her Amanda's story. Um, and the sextortion and the pain. And that meant a lot to her. So I would love, as gosh, I can never talk to you without ugly crying. But I would love if you would just leave a message for her and all of the other kids who are facing this, who feel guilty, don't know what to do, feel that they can't tell anyone if their parents have found out, just are hiding it and using other devices and are lost. Would you let them know that there's a way out?
There's always a way out, um, out of everything, and we can never give up hope, and never feel guilt, never feel blame, um, especially if you know something has happened and you've shared private information, or you've shared an intimate image or an intimate video, and someone, you can stop that, and you can realize that what the other person is doing is 100% totally wrong. That person at the other end um, is exploiting you, is human trafficking you, and you can easily Google those definitions up, right? And using your services and what you have given in trust in an unlawful and um, horrible way. And that's when you have to. I've had kids message me and say, "Oh, I've shared an image. I'm afraid it's going to go out in the schools. What should I do?" And I'm going to be so embarrassed, and I just want to kill myself, which you don't ever want to do. You know what? You've done it. You've shared an image, and body parts are body parts. We say penis, we say breast, we say vagina. We teach that in our early learning years, right? Own it, understand it. If something you've done, you've taken a picture of yourself and sent it, or someone, admit it, and then move forward and go to an adult and start to solve the problem. Do not feel embarrassed. Do not feel guilt. And it happens, things happen to all of us. And we learn from our own life experiences. And from our experiences, we can learn to educate others. And that's one of the most important things that we have to understand. Life is worth living, and we can solve the problems that we come across, just like this global pandemic of COVID 19. We can solve it. It just takes time, and it takes an understanding, and it takes people working together. And so we never give up.
I think that that will inspire her and so many more. Carol, when she looked at me and everyone's worried that she's going to hurt herself, and I said, "Look at the little girl we lost. Look at how many we've lost and what she might be doing today. And you can't deprive the world of you." Um,
You know what? And I was just at ICAC in Florida in December and listened to horrific stories. And those stories actually motivate the um, exploitation teams to work even harder, right? Having a young person be able to share their story in how they were groomed and what happened, and how they are coming out of it to share and as a teaching experience is what is needed more. And you ICAC teams can't go searching for individuals to speak out because of confidentiality. But if someone volunteers to share this story, so you've screwed up, so you've done this, let's work on turning it around. Like Amanda's story is a tragedy, but we're turning it around to create some positivity and awareness around it, right? Um, it's just an action that we can think about.
yeah, it's not who we are, it's what we did. And, if we look back to things we did growing up, they were totally different. But I remember my friends used to stand on the top of a station wagon while we drove down the highway surfing. And, I shouldn't say that out loud because my grandchildren are going to start to copy that one day. But we need to recognize that there is life after this and that you can't blame yourself because an adult who's very good at this and might be trained at it, maybe doing it in groups to find the way into your psyche, the way into your soul, and whether you like pina coladas and walks in the rain, that's their job. And you're not going to be able to spot it. You're not going to be able to keep that from happening. And in the end, there is hope. And that's
You
it.
have adults listening on this stream too?
We do. Absolutely.
Well, the message to adults, like we've focused on the message to young people. So the message to adults is to do start that communication with your young person, make it trustful, make it meaningful, and create that tone of um, being non-judgmental, because things happen as you shit happens, right? Because if you're judgmental, if your young person comes to you and says, I just sent an intimate image of this to a boy I liked, or to a person I don't know online, and as an adult you go all ape crazy on them, your young person will never share information with you again. And that's not what you need in the role of parenting these days. You need a trust. So adults need to pull on their big boy pants,
Yeah, I was
right?
going to say that.
And 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 listen. Listening is important. Listening, being non-judgmental, and then working towards a calm solution. Oftentimes, taking away technology isn't like you rip the technology out of your child's hands and say, this is it, no more. Your child's just going to find technology somewhere else because, you know what?
It's
Her
life.
best friend probably has a tablet and an iPhone and another computer. So technology is everywhere. So it's teaching how to use it appropriately, and what is good and what is not good, and how it can affect your reputations and your common sense and all that is really important. And you know what? If as a parent, if you're thinking about giving your child a device, um, start the conversation about how to use that device, how what that device does really early. It doesn't start when you hand it to them. The conversation starts at least 5 years before you're even thinking about it.
I like that. We've got a new program called Cyber Wellbeing, and it's going to be teaching adults how to be trustworthy adults, not just trusted. And young people are going to share what they want and what they don't want, and that they don't want the mama drama. I always have been saying from a million years ago, take a washcloth into the bathroom with you, close the door, and
Yep.
scream bloody murder while it's shoved in your mouth, so the kids see you calm, the kids see you fine. In the end, parenting is so much faking it. And so we need to make sure that our children trust us and that we're worthy of that trust. And Carol, I've watched you over the years, and your wisdom, your training and background getting to this and being able to take that and apply it to a life tragedy and helping your daughter's voice be heard all around the world to save the lives of others is
It's
pretty
funny, I'm using my mama bear cup because that's what we all become. We become mama bears.
Well, I created a new name for myself. It was called Nanny, what is it? Net Granny. And everybody was very upset. They were like, no. And I said, but I am. I'm 69 years old. They were like, no, we just want to think he was a lawyer. And I
Yeah.
said, well, I'm an old lawyer, so I've got to get a cup. And thank you so much. Thank
Well,
you so much, Carol. I love you dearly. I
I
know
love
this
you
is a
too.
hard week, and it was great. I know Pam and Leah were so excited to see you. I'm sorry I wasn't there this time, but I love you so much. And thank you so much for everything you've done. And
Any,
thanks to Amanda for the lives she's changed.
thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
How do you turn this off?